Hello and welcome to a Drake Music vlog as part of our Think22 programme. Hi, my name's Douglas Noble and I'm the Think22 programme leader, and I'm here with my colleague.
Hi there everyone, I'm John, and I've got my name just under my little square. I am a white male with a beard. I've got a kiss curl drop down from my forehead. I'm wearing big silver headphones, and I've got a nice microphone popping in from the side of the screen. So that sort of audio describes myself, and on the actual screen there's my square and Douglas is next to me. So over to you, Douglas.
Yeah, so just to audio describe myself, I'm a white male in my 50s. I've got short fair hair, I'm wearing a blue shirt, and I've got square black glasses, and I'm sitting in my living room. And it's very nice to be here chatting to you, John.
Great. And we'll, as we go through the different scenes and the different bits of the talk, if there are things that come up on the screen, we'll obviously audio describe them the best way we can live, I guess.
Yes, so this blog is a sharing and reflection on a session that we did at the Music Mart conference about 10 days ago. It's part of the Drake Music Amy programme, and that's up on the screen at the moment, the Drake Music logo and the Amy logo. That stands for the Alliance for a Musically Inclusive England, and it's a youth music funded programme through the Arts Council, and our Think22 programme is one of the programmes funded by that. The session that we did at Music Mart Conference, which is the national conference for music education hubs across England, was on the role of online provision in inclusive and accessible music education. And that title is also on the screen at the moment.
So obviously we had both at tags and hashtags. So this next screen just highlights the two at tags, which are still alive, which still you can reach us at these on Twitter and other forms of social media, but mainly Twitter, I think the at ones are. And so we've got at We All Make Music and at Drake_music. And if I go to the next slide, there are three more with hashtags, and the hashtags read hashtag We All Make Music, hashtag Amy Music Mark, which was specific for the Amy partners who were joining in on the day of the Music Mark conference that this workshop formed part of. And then the final hashtag musical inclusion. And we're still really up for hearing your conversation and your thoughts as we go through the blog today, but also to hear your experience and your practice around inclusive music making in the music education sector. We had a webinar back in April when lockdown really hit our sector, I guess. And that's where we started the workshop for Music Mark this time, wasn't it? Sort of 7 months later. So I'm going to pull up this slide, and if you'd be happy to talk us through, just so there's me and Douglas on the screen still, but we've got a slide beside us now with the title "What Makes Online Music Education Inclusive and Accessible."
So, having done it in April at the very beginning of the lockdown period, or first lockdown period, we felt it was important to bring people together again to ask the same question, with people having had sort of 8 or 9 months of experience through necessity of delivering music education online, and we wanted to give a space or make a space for people to share their experience of doing that as part of an ongoing conversation. And within that conversation at the Music Mart conference were a number of members of the Drake Music team who were bringing lived experience of that themselves, and they made contributions. The slide on the screen at the moment is the first sort of series of slides that shares the kind of themes that came out of the first workshop that we did in April. So they are key points from colleagues across the sector. There were over 70 people at that first workshop, and I think we had about 50 at Music Mark as well.
Yeah.
The first bullet point is exploring new ways of working can be positive. So essentially, the expediency or the necessity of taking things online meant that the sector had to be creative and find new ways of working, some of which actually became positive ways of working. And we'll say a little bit more about that, I'm sure, in this session. The second point was around pace and space, and this being a key point that underpins a lot of the thinking that we do about our inclusive practice, which is working at a speed and in a way that allows all to be able to contribute and for their contribution to be meaningful and valued. And then the third one, and again, this is something that as reflective practitioners we all find all the time, don't we? Mistakes can provide opportunities to learn. So doing things that go wrong can really accelerate the learning and understanding process. So embracing the positivity of mistakes.
I'm laughing because even in making this vlog, it's taken us a while to get here. So this next slide says online interaction can be exhausting. And I think we've all found that the pace and space thing has been a real, it really has resonated. And a lot of the people who contributed at the workshop at Music Mark brought those experiences and those challenges of online. And so the first bullet point of that says time feels different in the virtual world. And it brings about a whole, range of access issues that are new ones to think about. But actually online, a lot of the access issues are actually about our need for to feel welcome and to feel like we're in control of stuff. So time feels different on the virtual world was part of that. The value in smaller groups, the difficulty of being able to speak in huge webinars is really, really challenging and difficult. And a lot of preparation. So the next bullet point says communicate well before the session. And the next point on there says, how do people want to participate? It's all about taking a lot more time to engage and do what we should be doing. This is about good practice. And checking in regularly with one another is the final point on that. None of these are sort of, would surprise anybody, but they're so easily forgotten and they all create barriers if they're not put in place. But this final slide, Douglas, is also kind of resonated in what was going on at Music Mark for us, wasn't it?
Very much so. So the final slide says, involving participants in changes to practice. And the bullet points on there are, what questions do we need to ask? Be aware of barriers and understanding of obstacles. Getting young people's feedback, and we want to just come back on that point in a minute, and being open to adjustments.
Yeah.
But you wanted to dig in a bit, didn't you, to that point, getting young people's feedback? John?
Well, there was an interesting comment on the getting young people's feedback about getting everybody's feedback, everybody that's involved. And there was a comment about involving support workers and people who support disabled people in workshops, thinking about the different roles that people play in the environment and how sometimes we have to have those conversations about what roles people have. I mean, I know that my personal assistants don't participate in workshops that they've got a role which is to support me, but they wouldn't contribute in sort of the activities as such. So it's about giving the people who are on the course as participants the freedom and sometimes, I've worked at Drake where we've had conversations where it's really important that only the young disabled people are in the room. And so we have to think about how young disabled people are supported so they can have the space to explore and experiment. Getting everybody's feedback is really, really important. But it's also important to also, as part of that, unpack that whole thing about each person who's there, what their role is, and being clear about that so that it doesn't restrict the participants freedom to learn. In Think22, we've got a number of partners who we are having some lovely, lovely conversations with. I don't know if you want to just bring some of that in, Douglas.
Thanks, John. And it's really important to acknowledge the role of the partners in this. So it's 4 music education hubs that we're working closely with. That's Essex, Coventry, Newham and Thames, which is Tower Hamlets. And we're very much on a journey together. The conversations that we're sharing with them reflect back into this workshop, which is really a lot around starting with the social model as a sort of set of principles to underpin everything we do and how we think about inclusion. But then how do we put that into practice? And in this context, of course, of working online, there's a need to keep that unpacking happening around the pedagogy, the practice, the feedback, the outcomes for young people, the way that the workforce is developed in order to be able to support this work. So a big theme of our work at the moment is around that kind of sharing of doing. And if we weren't doing it with our music education hubs, we wouldn't have that opportunity to bring that back into these reflective conversations. I just want to pick up on some of the things that were said in that workshop at Music Mart, because there was some really rich and important thinking that came through Q&A in the sort of Zoom function, but also onto the document that you've mentioned, John, which is still a live document.
Yeah.
And we will share the link to that and the content of that. But there was some really nice stuff around rethinking perhaps what are the outcomes for young people as defined by those young people, of course, which is good practice, but maybe reconsidering what might be considered a successful outcome, and that some of those kind of bold, measurable musical outcomes may be less likely or less easy to capture, and some of the social ones perhaps more and personal ones being more to the fore. And of course, the fact that people are actually able to express themselves and have a voice and enjoy themselves. Again, on the positive front, there was something about how people are rethinking the way that they are able to connect. And someone talked about the online environment really allowing a more visual way of working with learners, using cursors and highlights, and actually then linking that in some of the software that is perhaps used commonly, like Sibelius, as it actually moved people's skills on very quickly.
Yeah.
On the other side of it, of course, it doesn't work for everybody. And there was a kind of interesting dialogue around the challenge between the need to be very visual and visible on the screen and the difficulty that places or it creates for some people, perhaps, who find that quite hard for themselves to be visible, don't want to be visible, and they may be in a leadership role where the leadership role is asking that of them. And so how do they balance that up? Because their neurodiversity or their own particular way of communication doesn't work without, or it's not something they personally find easy. Same with the kind of heavy reliance on spoken word. Some of the visual cues that we have in a face-to-face environment are harder to see, read, bring with us into an online environment. So for leadership styles that don't rely so much on spoken word, perhaps because speaking isn't easy for somebody, or actually their leadership skills are based around a different way of communicating, that can create challenges. So we have to, as at the same time as embracing the opportunity of the online environment, I think we have to keep pushing how we use it and how we support both the people we might consider to be the learners and those that we consider to be leaders in it, and make sure that the support is there for them both to achieve their best within it.
One of the things that started to happen, particularly over the last few months for us at Drake, at the Think22 program, is that kind of, because of the way we're changing delivery and the way we're working together with partners, is that it's given us an opportunity to come together online a little bit more. And both with the workshop and with our work with our partners, it's create an opportunity to check in more regularly, to have conversations more regularly about inclusion and access. And I think one of the big things that we've started to experience with our 4 partners on Think22 is that whole kind of thing. I think one of our partners said, we can have more regular meetings would be really helpful because it makes it less seismic. It breaks inclusion down into real conversations every day. And I think it's a little bit, reminds me of that kind of idea of when we talk about disability equality and disability art, I always encourage people to immerse yourself in it so that it isn't a strange world. It isn't something that is new to you because it's out there and it's very, very rich. And the only way you can really start to make it a reality is by immersing yourself in these principles of access and inclusion and make them lived. The social model's a real lived theory. It's not a thing that's written on paper, although there's lots written about it on paper. It's really in our hearts. It's really in our practice. We work with practitioners, and practitioners are hungry to make inclusion work. And the bit that we're starting to talk about is this idea about strategic power shift. Individual experiences of practitioners become a strategic way of us making sure that inclusion is a reality. And the challenge is to put the resource into giving people the support in training and making it real so that young people are experiencing inclusive music education.
Thank you, John. I'm just going to... There was so much in what you just said there, but I just want to sort of finish off by quoting Jonathan Westrop. He asked about whether we have a crystal ball and to look forward into 2021. But actually, that Zoom upgrade hasn't happened yet, the crystal ball upgrade. But I do think that essentially what he was asking was, what are we going to take forward? Are we going to go straight back to face-to-face or fall back into that? Or is what we've been doing in this kind of online environment going to come with us? I definitely think many of the things will come with us. But I also do think we probably haven't fully unpacked or explored that yet. And I think we, as reflective organisations and practitioners, we need to keep pushing the edges of that, because it does offer all those inclusive opportunities, some of which we've talked about now, both strategic and in terms of delivery and in relationships and creativity, etc.
Yeah.
So the interrogation or unpacking of that is something that we can bring with us.
We really, really want to hear your experience, your thoughts at We All Make Music and at Drake Music, Drake_music, sorry. So use those and make comment on this vlog. It's been an experiment for both me and Douglas, sort of plotting some of the journey that we're on at the moment. I hope it's been interesting and useful for everyone. It's been great being with you, and thanks for everything.
No, real pleasure, John. Thanks very much. See you again soon, and thanks for watching, those that are watching out there.
Yeah.
And we look forward to hearing your feedback on